From just a stats standpoint, Ward was fantastic this year and deserved his Heisman Trophy nomination. He's easily the best playmaker of this quarterback group this year. As I already mentioned, he has great arm talent with a quick release and is capable of throwing at diverse arm angles that make him an extremely exciting player. And I think he has everything it takes to be a long-term star for an NFL team for the next several seasons. Hey y'all, welcome to the first scouting profile of the 2025 NFL draft season. I feel like I've been talking this up for the past several weeks, but I'm very happy to finally get this quarterback series started. For this video, we'll be doing an in-depth analysis of Miami quarterback Cam Ward. As an immediate disclaimer, just with my scheduling and planning with quarterback evals and charting, I had to complete this eval and record most of the video before Ward's potential game against Iowa State. Maybe that bowl game changed how people view him, but I feel pretty confident about my stance on him and wanted to get this out before it was too late. Also, I'll go into how I grade quarterbacks as I get to each part, but as a quick summary, I grade quarterbacks with both qualitative and quantitative grades. For the qualitative measures, I grade their footwork, pocket presence, playmaking, arm strength, release, and top start potential. For the quantitative measures, I chart all the quarterback's throws to get charting numbers from the 4 games I consider the toughest from the quarterback's final season, or at least the 4 I was able to get film on. For the charting, I try to grade their accuracy, throw on the run ability, and success against pressure or blitz, and will also grade their ball security based on total number of interceptions and fumbles they have in their final season. So that creates about a 50-50 split of qualitative and quantitative grades, which at least led me to be pretty reliable in my rankings and grades last season, as I was higher than most analysts on quarterbacks like Bo Nix, and lower than most on quarterbacks like Spencer Rattler. If you do want to check out my grades and evals of the quarterbacks from last year, you can check them out with the link in the description. Also, like last year, I'll be trying to cover a quarterback nearly every week leading up to the 2025 NFL Draft. So if you don't want to miss any quarterback evals, be sure to subscribe. Now let's take a look at Cam Ward. Starting out, I want to first just take a really basic look at his raw passing and rushing numbers, including for the games I charted that we'll do a deeper dive for the charting later. From just a stats standpoint, Ward was fantastic this year and deserved his Heisman Trophy nomination. He completed 67.2% of his passes for 4,313 yards and 39 touchdowns while only having 7 interceptions. He wasn't the biggest threat as a rusher, but he does have some good scramble ability that should translate to the NFL if given the chance. Despite his great season, Miami's defense was honestly really bad this year, and it's the primary reason they missed the college football playoffs. Ward's game against Syracuse is probably the biggest example of this, with Ward having a really good day statistically and a really good day from a charting perspective, but the team still lost due to a fumble return for a touchdown, and Miami's defense not being able to stop Syracuse at the end of the game. Now, Ward isn't perfect. His Georgia Tech and Duke games were pretty rough, and the Duke game specifically we'll take a deeper dive in later to see what went wrong there. But there's a lot to really like about his accuracy, ability to make plays while still protecting the ball, and the way he helped create one of the best offenses in college football this season. I think all the good and even some of the bad of Ward is shown in the Cal game, so if you want a quick idea of what type of quarterback Ward is, I would highly recommend watching that game, but we'll also be taking a closer look at that game later with some charting as well. For those that don't have time to watch Ward's game, I do want to go over some of the qualitative traits I grade on to give a better idea of what to expect. Starting with his footwork, this is definitely his biggest area of improvement needed. It got slightly better this season compared to last year, since he does a better job staying off his toes, but he still has a tendency to get very bouncy in the pocket. That still plays a part in him not always able to get his feet set and becoming too reliant on his upper body on throws, including him not stepping into his throws, which can cause him to not reach his target. When he does try to use both together, the timing can be off, which also affects his accuracy. His base can also fluctuate as he can lose focus on it while reading the defense, and his base along with his footwork in general can just get really sloppy when he's trying to rush a throw. His dropback is also really rough and is too nonchalant. At times it looks like he doesn't have focus on his footwork with his drop, with it being very heel clicky at times, and seems like he's kind of just going through the motions. So my first grade of this eval, I use the standard American GPA system to grade my prospects at this time. So for those unfamiliar with that format, an A equals 4 points, an A minus 3.67, a B plus 3.33, a B 3, and so on. I'll eventually take the averages of all these for their final overall grade, but with the big areas of improvements Ward needs to still make with his footwork, he ended up with his lowest score of all of his grading with a C- for his footwork. Another area he'll need to improve is his pocket presence. He still slipped into his hero mode tendencies a little bit too often, but he generally looked more calm in the pocket and did a good job working through his progressions. Also, he did a good job knowing where his outlet option is and did a better job at minimizing sacks this year compared to previous seasons. Last year, blitzing and getting pressure on him was an easy way to beat Ward, but this year he actually made teams pay. whether it's delivering the ball before pressure hits home or scrambling out of the pocket and delivering an accurate ball on the run. He's just hard to beat and still has the improv skills to be able to beat defenses. That being said, he can still work on the nuances of this skill. He's very good against blitzes and pressures, as we'll see later in his charting scores, but he can elevate his game by making subtle movements in the pocket instead of breaking his base to go into more of a sprint to escape pressure. On the flip side, he sometimes gets too comfortable in the pocket and has defenders sneak up on him, which has led to some big losses on sacks. I think while he improved on how to read a defense, he can still fall into a bit of a lull and stare down his target, which leads to some lapses in the pocket and delayed responses. I would just really like to see him make those movements in the pocket and even use his eyes to look off defenders to prove that the times he beats the defenses is more due to him being able to read the defense rather than him just relying on the amount of playing time he's gotten so far in his college career. I think if this does turn into more of an issue in the NFL, teams will slow him down by just throwing 4-man rushes at him, since this often gave him trouble in college, particularly this year when he faced Duke and Georgia Tech. With all that in mind, Ward ended up with his second lowest grade for his overall grade, with a C+ for pocket presence. So we started out on a sour note, but let's get to some of the areas that Ward really excels at. Starting with his arm strength and release. Despite a lot of what I just said about his footwork and pocket presence, Ward is a really talented player with effortless arm strength, which lets him fling the ball downfield with great velocity. He also has an elastic arm that can release the ball at any angle he desires. Those arm angles paired with his quick, efficient release and arm strength help him sneak the ball into tight windows through defenders. Now he does have a 3/4 release throwing motion, which isn't a deal breaker in the NFL, as we've seen some players like Brett Favre have a very successful career despite this. However, it can affect the touch that he can put on balls, and I think we saw this at certain times when he tried to throw a touch 50-50 opportunity for his receiver, and the receiver just wasn't able to make a great play on the ball since there wasn't enough lofted angle to it. Again, not a deal breaker, but just something he'll need to learn how to work around, and it could be a bit of a learning curve for him if he goes to a team that likes to go to those types of passes in the red zone. With a lot more good than bad, Ward ended up scoring an A- for arm strength and a B+ with his release. Moving on to his playmaking, ball security, and top star potential, he's easily the best playmaker of this quarterback group this year. As I already mentioned, he has great arm talent with a quick release and is capable of throwing at diverse arm angles that make him an extremely exciting player. Also, we'll see this in a bit, but he's a very accurate passer in all areas of the field that should help him translate his skill to the NFL. On top of that, he's deceptively a good scrambler who can pick up good yards when he breaks a run off. He isn't a Jaden Daniels, Jalen Miller type who can pick up a huge gain, but he's closer to someone like Bo Nix in the sense that they have enough speed to be able to still keep the defense honest. On top of that, he can be hard to bring down, which also helps him extend plays, and he does a great job keeping his eyes downfield when on the move. That being said, the big thing that he struggled with in previous seasons that he did at least improve on, but he'll need to continue to work on, is not going too hard into hero ball antics. While he did make improvements, there are still definitely times when he gets caught staring down receivers and forcing a ball to try to make a play, or will try to overextend a play and lead to a big loss. Those areas still pop up too often and were a big reason his ball security score is still a bit low. That being said, the continued improvements in this area and his overall progression should be encouraging for an NFL coaching staff, and I think he has everything it takes to be a long-term star for an NFL team for the next several seasons. So Ward ended up scoring a B+ for his playmaking. For his ball security, this is a quantitative measure, and Ward ended up with either an interception or fumble on 10 of his dropbacks and rushes, which equaled out to an interception or fumble on every 51.4 pass or rush attempt, which equaled out to a B- with my scale. For his top star potential grade, he also ended up with a B-. So we have a lot of the grades in, but let's finally take a look at the charting results. Now before I get into the results of his charting, which if you're a visual follower, you can see his on-platform or his in-pocket results on the screen now, but to give some background on how I do my charting, since it can be a little bit different how each person does it, first, I grade or chart each throw based on their vertical and horizontal accuracy. If it's deemed accurate or perfect, it gets 1 point on either or both scale, and go into the area as a 2 out of 2. If it's too high or too low from a verticality standpoint, but is on the money from a horizontal perspective, it'll get a point from the horizontal scale, but not get a point from the vertical scale, and go into the scale with a 1 out of 2 score. Also, I separate the field into 3 areas, or left of the hash, the middle or in the hashes, and right of the hashes. From a distance perspective, I have it separated by less than 5 yards from the line of scrimmage, or what makes up my short accuracy or grade, 5 to 14 yards from the line of scrimmage, or what makes up my medium accuracy grade, 15 to 20 yards from the line of scrimmage, or what makes up my intermediate accuracy area or grade, and 30 or more yards from the line of scrimmage, or what makes up my deep area or grade. Last year I had just my short grade being 15 or less yards, medium being 15 to 29, and deep being 30 or more yards, but I felt the short area grade was being elevated by some players who had a really high screen rate. so separating it a bit further seemed to give more true accuracy numbers. I'll also go into what these charting numbers mean for their final grade later on, but since I have the data from last year, I did want to also color code the field to give an idea of how he performed against other drafted quarterbacks last year. If the area is green in the 30 or less yards from the line of scrimmage, that means he performed at least at the 70th percentile compared to the quarterbacks who were drafted last season. If it's in the yellow, he's at least at the 50th percentile, and if it's in the red, he's below the 50th percentile. The exception to that coloring system is the deep area passes, or the 30 or more yards from the line of scrimmage, since there's just a very small sample size with a lot of the skewed data. So I did a more basic figure of green being greater than 60%, 40 to 60 being in yellow, and less than 40 being red. As you can see if you're a visual follower, there's a ton of green on Cam Ward's chart. His short and medium areas of the field are consistently in the 70s, and the middle medium area of the field actually being higher at 85%, which is a really great sign for NFL teams since that's an area NFL quarterbacks have to be able to win and throw accurately to be able to avoid turnovers. His intermediate numbers also look really good with a great 83.33% charting grade in the right intermediate area of the field, and a good 61.54% charting grade to the left side, which is also good for right-handed quarterbacks based off of last year. His middle intermediate numbers aren't quite as good compared to last year's class, but still solid and shouldn't be a concern. Throughout the season, his deep ball numbers were pretty solid, but they were a bit shaky in the games I charted, as they were against more difficult matchups, and he had a harder time completing throws, particularly to the deep right area of the field. Now his numbers to the deep left, and especially the deep middle, were great at 75 and 100% respectively, but 12.5% for the deep right was pretty disappointing. But overall, a lot to really like from his accuracy in an area that I think is really underrated and that people write off because of the schedule Miami faced. That being said, accuracy typically translates throughout higher levels of competition, so I trust his accuracy in the NFL. For background on off-platform charting, I consider an off-platform throw when the quarterback is moving and isn't stationary in the pocket or on his throw attempt. I also use the same areas of the field and same percentiles for areas 29 yards and less from the line of scrimmage. And for the deeper areas, I have even less of a sample size, so I again simplified the color coding to either be green if it's 50% or greater, yellow at 25% to 49%, and red at less than 25%. With most quarterbacks, there's not going to be a big sample for the deep areas of the field, and the few throws he did make, he was unsuccessful with the throw being well off target and finishing at 0% and getting a score of 0 out of 2. The rest of the areas are pretty solid though. His right side of the field looked good at 62.5% in the right intermediate, 64.29% in the right medium, and 90% in the short right. He didn't make any attempts in the middle intermediate area of the field, but was good in the middle medium area, completing 62.5%, and short middle at 90%. The left side of the field got a little bit dicey, but I think that kind of shows that while he has good arm talent, his footwork isn't always there to get the ball out accurately when on the move to the opposite side of the field. His intermediate and short numbers on the left were okay, but both being at 50%, but the left short area was really disappointing at 43.75%, which is especially a discouraging number since a fair number of those attempts were screen passes that he just ended up having to rush his pass for, but they were all really close to the line of scrimmage, so I just expect that to be a little bit higher. That being said, his final numbers on the move still look good as a whole, even if they are carried by the right side of the field, and the left side is still passable enough even with the disappointing results in the short left area. Before getting into the supplemental data for these games, I just want to quickly show a fair concern with Cam Ward, which is consistency. Over the past couple of seasons, Cam Ward would have incredible moments and highlights, but struggled to continue those plays throughout the season, and most notably for me last year when he really collapsed after having a great start to the year and looking like a Heisman contender and a possible first-round quarterback. This year he's been a lot more consistent throughout the season, but he still definitely has some moments. We kind of saw this as a microcosm against Cal, where Ward was pretty shaky for the start of the game, but was on fire to finish the game and led an incredible 20-point comeback in the fourth quarter. Despite the slow start, Ward had a really great game that would look even better in his box score had his receivers not had so many drops. For audio listeners, there's a ton of green on the screen outside the red Tetris T block in the middle and the medium right area. Ward definitely had trouble getting the ball to the middle of the field, but was excellent at attacking on other areas of the field with numbers almost all consistently at 80% or higher other than a deep left area. But his deep middle area was a perfect 4 for 4 with some of the 2 best balls he threw down the field all season. If we go to his off-platform passing against Cal, it's mostly good. He definitely didn't get the ball down the field that well on the move, but honestly in this game it might have been for the best to ensure he protects the ball and keeps the offense moving. Again, the left area on the move wasn't great, but we again see a good green block in the middle and the right short and medium areas to help them keep the team alive. Now his game against Duke was a much different story. There's still a fair amount of green and around the field, but a whole lot of red and gray. Ward especially had trouble passing the ball downfield despite even trying to drive it downfield, getting a score of just 1 out of 6 to his deep right area, and not getting any attempts to the left or deep middle areas. Now he was good in the intermediate and most of the medium areas, but the short areas were pretty disappointing other than his short left area, which has helped elevate it thanks to a high number of screen passes to that area in the game. For this game, Ward also had a lot of trouble reading the defense despite his raw box score looking pretty good. Duke sent a lot of complex blitzes and coverages that slowed Ward down and limited his ability to beat the defense downfield. That forced him to stay alive in the pocket and have to read the defense to know how to beat them. Against a lot of teams he still could, but Duke gave him a lot of trouble and could be a bit concerning for his ability to read NFL defenses, as they only will get more complicated. Things only got worse when looking at Ward's off-platform numbers against Duke. There's not a single green square, with his best being his intermediate left area being yellow with a score of 1 out of 2. The rest of the areas either weren't targeted or are red, with almost all being at 0%. His accuracy can usually be good even on the run, but his footwork was pretty erratic this game, and I think a lot of that had to do with the frustrations he had trying to read the defense. Which again, I think that can be a very fair criticism of Ward, to see if we'll get more of the Cam Ward against Duke in the NFL, or more of the Cam Ward against Cal, since both are very clearly different players. For some supplemental data from his charted games, for some of the numbers, I again have percentiles to give an idea how he compared to last year's class. His left side of the field accuracy was about middle of the pack, but his middle and right side were excellent. Now he will need to win in all areas of the field, but his middle of the field accuracy being 80.56% is incredibly encouraging and should be a great translatable trait for an NFL team. He still definitely has some lapses, but having a total of 12 throws that were deemed way off target or essentially not being remotely close to his pass catcher is really encouraging and hopefully helps relieve some consistency concerns. He also did a much better job minimizing sacks with just 9 in the games I charted, and 22 in the whole season, which was his lowest total in his career at the FBS level. He also had just 2 fumbles in these 4 games, and just 3 on the whole season, which again is a big improvement from last year. All season, he also did a good job finding passing windows, with just 4 passes deflections in the games I charted, and I also included any pass interference calls or no calls just for reference, which summed up to 4 in the games I charted. He also did a better job giving up on plays, as he had trouble doing this in previous seasons and would go too hard into hero ball mode, but this year he was much more calm, taking 8 throwaways in the games I charted, with just 2 interceptions in those games. Now the reason his raw accuracy doesn't show his true accuracy is the number of drops his pass catchers had. For just the 4 games I charted, he had 18 drops by his pass catchers, which is a pretty high mark. Hopefully whatever team he goes to in the NFL has a more consistent receiver group to make this less of an issue. As I mentioned before, he has good scramble ability, but only had 3 designed runs and 8 scrambles in the games I charted. I think this is an area of his game that NFL teams can use more in the NFL if they want to, but I don't mind seeing him prove that he can be more of a pocket passer this year. Finally, he was fantastic at beating blitzes and pressures, beating blitzes at a 66.67 rate and pressures at a 59.21% rate. Both those are very high marks compared to last year's class, and beating pressure and blitzes is so important to help project NFL success. The big thing for Ward, though, is going to be able to beat teams where they don't bring that blitz, as he can sometimes get himself into covered sacks if a team only rushes 4 and he has trouble reading that defense. So with all that data, Ward ended up scoring a B+ for his short throw accuracy, A- for medium throw accuracy, B+ for intermediate throw accuracy, B- for deep throw accuracy, A- for his throw on the run ability, and B+ for his success against pressure or blitzes. So as a summary of Cam Ward's strengths, Ward has great arm talent that is paired with a quick, efficient release that allows him to get the ball out in an instant at any angle desired. He has great accuracy in nearly all areas of the field, and is a big-time playmaker who can make plays on the ground and allow plays in the air thanks to his arm. He also played more calm and collected from the pocket this season compared to previous seasons, which gives hope that he can continue to improve to help take his game to the next level in the NFL. Also, after struggling against pressure and blitzes last season, he made big improvements this season, and now teams will have to decide if it's worth sending blitzes at him or if he'll make them pay. That being said, Cam Ward's 3/4 release can affect the touch he can put on balls, and it shows on balls that need good touch for tough placement. His footwork is still very much a work in progress, and will still need to get even better to make it in the NFL. He also still needs to improve his pocket management skills, as he still has a lot of the all-or-nothing breaks in his pocket, and needs to learn how to make those subtle movements to extend his protection and keep his base to help make cleaner throws. He also still takes a bit too many risks with the ball, which could frustrate an NFL coaching staff. Finally, there is still a part of me that's worried about Cam Ward's consistency and if he'll regress to his bad habits. We continue to see less of them throughout his college career, so I'm hopeful they won't become an issue for him, but I just can't pretend to ignore his really bad moments since we more often than not see bad habits pop up in the NFL. So, by taking the average of all his grades for his final overall grade, I end up with a grade of 3.05 out of 4, which equals out to being a good starter. For context, last season I ended up giving a 3.22 grade to Caleb Williams, a 3.17 to Drake May, Jane Daniels, and Bo Nix, and a 3.06 grade to JJ McCarthy. As I mentioned with the adjustments I made this season, the grades likely aren't exactly going to be a 1-to-1, but we can assume that he would likely grade out very similarly to JJ McCarthy, who ended up going the top 10 in the draft last season. I think Ward requires less development than McCarthy, and depending on how he can handle the pocket in the NFL and read defenses, he could be ready to start week 1. I think he has all the tools and accuracy to make in the NFL, but he just needs to improve his footwork and pocket presence to be a truly special player. Due to both having a lot of great improv ability, good arm talent, good accuracy, and some deficits in protection, pocket management, and footwork, I have Baker Mayfield at Cam Ward's comp. Both are excellent playmakers and players who put it all on the line to help their team win for better or for worse, as they can sometimes make really risky plays when they resort to hero ball mode. But both also have deceptively good scrambling ability while being great passers on the run to make it hard for a defense to stop them when their accuracy is on point. Baker has proven to be a really good NFL quarterback now, and he's made improvements as a pocket passer and fine-tuned his accuracy. I can see Ward getting there too and be a very good quarterback for the next several years, just like Baker has been for the Buccaneers. And that wraps up the first quarterback eval of the draft season. Let me know what your thoughts are on the eval and on Cam Ward. I'm planning to have Shadur Sanders' video out next week, and I'll be working to have a quarterback eval most of the weeks leading up to the draft, so be sure to not miss any of them and be sure to subscribe. While you're at it, like the video as it would help the channel and the series grow thanks to you. If you want just a written form of the eval, you can subscribe to my Substack as I'll have the full written eval for each player out at the same time as the video. But thank you all and see you all next time.